This is part 2 of our videos on total inability. If you haven't seen part 1, you should really watch that first. I'll link it right here. And we're going to begin part 2 with just a review of our definition, which is sinful humans. Sinful humans, prior to the new birth, are unable to do any good. Sinful humans, prior to the new birth, are unable to do any good. And what we're going to talk about is that idea of unableness. Ableness and unableness. What do we mean that we're unable to do any good? We don't normally speak like that. We're going to begin with a very fundamental drawing. We're going to start with a stick figure. We're going to start with the stick man. You can see that this stick man is bound by chains. There's a chain on both his arms and both his legs, and these chains are binding him, keeping him from doing anything good. He is unable to do any good. This stick man is unable to do any good. He can only sin. And so let's look at the Bible a little bit, and then we're going to return back to this drawing. We're going to start in Ephesians 2. This is a place often cited for this idea, and I think it's a great starting point, but I think we need to go further after it. Ephesians 2, verses 1 through 2. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked. You were dead. Dead. Where were you dead? Why were you dead? You were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked. Paul here is talking about this idea of spiritual deadness. Spiritual deadness. Paul is not writing to people who were actually physically dead. That would be impossible because they're walking. They're walking in trespasses and sins. They're doing wicked things. These are people who were once doing evil things. They were following the prince of the power of the air. They were sons of disobedience. They were doing wicked things. So we know that they're not physically dead. They are spiritually dead. And a question that is often asked at this point is, what can a dead man do? What can a dead man do? And the answer to that is a resounding nothing. A dead man can do nothing. So what can a spiritually dead man do? What can a spiritually dead man do? Well, nothing of value spiritually. Nothing of value morally. They're unable. Sinful humans are unable to do any good. So we'll go to Romans 3. In Romans 3, verses 10 through 18, Paul is quoting Psalm 14 and Psalm 53. And he says many things. He says, we've all done wicked things. There is no one who understands. The venom of snakes is in our mouths, and we speak lies. And here are 3 more things that he says in that section of Scripture. He says, no one seeks for God. No one does good, not even one. Not even one. How many humans do good things? No one. How many humans seek for God? No one. No one does those things. There is no one who is good. Everyone is evil. Both Jew and Gentile are wicked. No one is good. One of my favorites, we go to Jeremiah 13:23. Now, in the first video, we quoted Jeremiah 17:9, where Jeremiah says that the heart is deceitful above all things. And earlier, 4 chapters earlier in chapter 13, this is what Jeremiah says. He asks a rhetorical question. Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Well, no. No, the Ethiopian cannot change his skin. The leopard cannot one day, as he's walking around, decide, you know what, I don't want to be spotted anymore, or I'd like to move this spot over here. No, it can't do that. The Ethiopian can't change his skin, and the leopard can't change his spots. Jeremiah continues, then also you can do good who are accustomed to do evil. Also you. Just like how that Ethiopian can't change his skin, just like how the leopard can't change his spots, so you can't do good. You can't do good because you are accustomed to doing evil, and you can't change those spots of yours, those wicked spots. Your heart is wicked, and you can't just change it. From a wicked heart comes wicked things, unable to do any good. But we still haven't answered the question of those chains. What are those chains exactly? Why is that stick man bound? Why are we bound? Why are we unable to do any good? Why is it? Why is it that we can't do any good? We see in the first three scriptures, Ephesians 2, Romans 3, Jeremiah 13, that we can't do good, that there's no one who does good. We're unable to do good. But why are we unable? Where is that unableness coming from? And we get much more clarity in Romans 8. Romans 8, verses 7 and 8. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. The mind that is set on the flesh. Here, Paul is talking about the natural person, the carnal person, the unregenerate human, the human who hasn't experienced the new birth, that mind that is set on the flesh, that hasn't been regenerated. It cannot submit to God's law. It won't submit to God's law. Indeed, it can't submit to God's law. It can't obey the law of God. Those who are in the flesh, those who are unregenerate, they are unable to please God. And what is causing that cannot? What is causing their inability? It is because they are hostile. They're hostile to God. You see, the reason that they can't submit to God's law is because they hate God. We hate God. We hate God. We should not pretend or pull any punches here. Humans are not neutral. Humans are not neutral. We're not open to the idea of God. We go forth from the womb hating God. We hate God, and it is because we hate God. Because we hate God, we are hostile against Him. We war against Him in our minds and our hearts. It is because of that hostility that we cannot submit to His law. We cannot do anything good. We cannot please Him because we hate Him. We turn to John chapter 3. How does John explain the problem? How does John explain the problem? This is what he says, John 3, verses 19 through 20. This is the judgment. The light has come into the world, that's Jesus. The light has come into the world, and people loved the darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light. Everyone who does wicked things hates the light. That's the problem. People love darkness, and they hate the light. Not only do we hate God, not only are we hostile against God, but we love sin. We love sin. We love to sin. We love darkness. We hate God, and we love all the things that God hates. And so returning to our little stick man, what are the chains that bind him? Why can this stick man do no good? Why can this stick man only sin? It is because he is bound by his affections. He is bound by his passions and desires. He is bound by his emotions. We call this the bondage of the will. The bondage of the will. There's nothing keeping him from doing good. It's not as if somebody's holding a gun to his head and forcing him to sin. That's not the case at all. No, he is bound by his emotions. He is bound by his passions and by his affections. He only wants to do evil. He doesn't want to do good. He is bound by his wicked heart. He is bound by his evil mind. He is bound by his sickened will. Sinful humans, prior to the new birth, are unable to do any good because they only want to do evil. They only want to do evil. They don't want to do any good. That's why they're unable. They only want to sin. They don't want to do any good. And this is true. This is true of unregenerate humans, all of them. We go forth from the womb wanting to rebel against God. We go forth from the womb wanting to sin. Sinful humans prior to the new birth are unable to do any good because they only want to do evil. Everything that an unregenerate person does, everything that a sinful human does, everything that a person does prior to the new birth is only wicked because they hate God and they love sin. I hope this is helpful to you. In the next video, we'll talk about good. What is required for action to actually be good? What is a good deed? What is a deed that is pleasing to God?